Welcome back to History of Simple Things. Today's topic comes from one of our viewers, Angus Aranda. Thanks for the suggestion. You asked, why is it called a keyboard? When we sit down at a computer today, the keyboard is one of the first things we interact with. We type passwords, compose emails, write essays, chat with friends, and enter commands into programs, all through this simple, familiar device. But have you ever stopped to wonder why it's called a keyboard? The name seems almost too obvious, but the truth is, the word carries with it centuries of history, evolution, and fascinating connections between music, writing, and technology. To really understand why we call it a keyboard, we need to trace the origins of both the word and the device itself, going back to long before the first personal computer ever existed. Let's explore, right here, on History of Simple Things. The word keyboard is made up of two simple parts, key and board. Let's start with the word key. In this context, a key doesn't mean the kind that unlocks a door, but rather a lever or button that you press to produce a specific result. This usage of key comes from the world of music. On instruments like the piano, harpsichord, and organ, the white and black levers are called keys because pressing each one produces a specific musical note. Over time, the word expanded to mean any button that triggers a response, whether that's a sound, a letter, or even an action on a machine. That's why even today we call the buttons on our typing devices keys. Now let's look at the second part, board. In Old English and Middle English, board often referred to a flat piece of wood or a surface used as a platform. Think about how we still use the word today in things like surfboard, dashboard, or motherboard. So when you put key and board together, you essentially get a flat surface with keys on it. That simple combination perfectly describes both a piano keyboard and a computer keyboard. In fact, the word keyboard was used to describe musical instruments long before computers came into the picture. Musical keyboards are actually the earliest keyboards in history, dating back hundreds of years. Instruments like the clavichord and harpsichord, and later the piano, were described as having keyboards because of the layout of keys across a flat surface. The idea of a series of buttons or levers arranged in rows that you press to produce an output was already deeply familiar in music before typing devices were even invented. This is why when typewriters began to appear in the 19th century, their arrangement of mechanical keys on a flat surface naturally came to be described as a keyboard. The term was already part of our vocabulary, and it fit perfectly. Speaking of typewriters, they play a huge role in how the modern computer keyboard got its name. The typewriter was essentially the ancestor of the computer keyboard. It was first introduced in the 1860s, and each key corresponded to a letter, number, or symbol. Typists would press these keys, and the machine would imprint inked characters onto paper. The arrangement of keys on typewriters eventually evolved into what we now call the QWERTY layout, named after the first 6 letters at the top left of the keyboard. This layout was designed to slow down typists slightly, preventing the mechanical arms from jamming when people type too quickly. Even though computers don't have that problem, the QWERTY arrangement stuck, and it remains the standard layout for most keyboards today. By the time computers began to emerge in the mid-20th century, the word keyboard was already firmly established. When engineers designed early computing machines, they needed a way for humans to input letters, numbers, and commands. Borrowing directly from the typewriter design, they created input devices with sets of keys arranged on a flat surface. Naturally, people referred to these as keyboards, since they looked and functioned just like the typing machines people were already familiar with. The terminology carried over seamlessly, and as computers became more common in homes, offices, and schools, the keyboard became the universal name for this input device. What's fascinating is how the meaning of the word keyboard has expanded over time. Originally, it was only used to describe musical instruments. Then it came to describe typewriters. Finally, it became the standard term for computer input devices. But even today, we still use it across these different domains. We talk about a piano keyboard, a synthesizer keyboard, or a digital keyboard on a smartphone screen. All of them share the same concept: a flat surface with a set of keys that produce outputs, whether that's music, letters, or commands. The continuity of the word across centuries shows how language adapts while preserving its roots. Another interesting point to note is how keyboards reflect the blending of old and new technologies. A keyboard might seem like a purely modern invention, but its roots stretch back to centuries-old instruments and devices. When you type on a keyboard, you're essentially using a design that evolved from pianos and typewriters, adapted for the digital age. Even the board part of the name reminds us of older times, when wood was the primary material for constructing such surfaces. Today, most keyboards are made of plastic and circuits, but the name board remains as a linguistic echo of its history. So, why is it called a keyboard? Because the term captures the essence of what the device is: a board covered with keys that produce results when pressed. The word itself connects modern computing to centuries of human history, from music to mechanical typewriters to digital technology. It's a reminder that even the most ordinary, everyday objects in our lives carry names with surprisingly deep origins. The next time you sit down at your computer, take a moment to look at your keyboard. Behind those plastic keys lies a story of music, invention, adaptation, and language. A story that explains why we still call it a keyboard today. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our other bingeable channels. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.